I did want to bring up something that came up over the weekend, and this is interesting, I think, to me and to you, in that it shows us a little bit of what was going on at Florida with Dan Mullen. Billy Napier said over the weekend regarding NIL bidding wars that we don't operate that way at Florida. He said that Florida will not be in the middle of some of these NIL bidding wars. He said, I think there is some of that going on, but we don't operate that way. He noted that coaches need to look at the big picture when talking about NIL. He argued no two situations are identical, which is why they need to be studied one at a time. He said, I think NIL is a portion of the decision, right? I think a lot of times when you really dig into why the player is leaving where he's at, there are other factors. All these situations are case by case. You've got to evaluate each situation independent of all the others. But he did say college football is now a land with no laws. And when you really dive into this, like, he's telling the truth, obviously. He is talking about the fact that Florida is not just going to go out and pay just ridiculous amounts of money to be able to get the best of the best football players. Dan Mullen was not super interested in recruiting, but I think part of that was the fact that he didn't want to get involved with these kids that wanted money and whatnot. I don't think anything has changed at Florida, regardless of who the new coach is, right?
Completely agree with that. And what this means is Florida's just not going to be able to keep up recruiting-wise. So their fan base needs to set that expectation. And that's tough for them, but that is now the expectation. Yeah, we're not going to do this if other people are, and if you're going to villainize the kids for taking the money, then you're just wrong. Shame on you for doing that. But
no, he did walk it back at least a little bit, Chris. He said there's a lot of gray area here relative to representation, what I can say, what I can't, what the third party can do, what they can't do. He said, I mean, right now we're living in a land with no laws, if that makes sense, but I continue to believe as every day goes by, and the more that we are, quote, boots on the ground as we get out to know people, NIL is going to be a slam dunk for the Florida Gators. So he's saying that they're going to provide some NIL for players. Obviously, I think if you're in the SEC, you have to do that. But I think what he started this off with, in that they are not going to get in these bidding wars for players, I think basically he's saying that Florida is going to continue to operate business as usual. And in that situation, yeah, you're already a little bit behind when it comes to recruiting anyway because of what the former staffs have done. You're always going to be able to get good players at Florida. Like, we're not saying anything like that. What we're saying is, can you keep up with the Georgias and Ohio States and Alabamas, right? Can you keep up with Texas A&M?
Are you wanting to compete at the top of the SEC, or are you happy with, being one of the best of the middle tier?
And that's a very interesting idea. That's a big question that Florida fans are going to have to come up with. That's what I'm talking
about when I'm saying you have to set expectations.
Yeah.
That's what I'm referring to. If you think that you're going to compete for the SEC, but you're not going to play the game to the maximum capacity, I'm not saying you can't one day, hit lightning in a bottle, have a hell of a recruiting class of guys that you just developed up that were all understarred and whatever, then that can happen. But year in and year out, you're just not going to be in that conversation. You're going to have to wait for lightning in a bottle.
I think you're right. Let me go on and dive through these. Let me dive through these reads.
Hang on. You talked about what? See, so many of these guys are marrying NIL and transfer together because they're both allowed, right?
Yeah.
Because what he was saying in that situation is like, they're going after other kids. Like he made a comment about, you just read it off. You said a bunch of stuff. I'm trying to remember exactly the phrasing of it. But basically it was the concept that, it's the Wild Wild West out here.
Yeah, and you got to figure out why they're leaving where they were.
Why they're leaving. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. He used the word leaving. The thing is kids can only leave one time. They can only leave once. All right? So once you have a transfer, they're yours for the duration unless you're willing to sit out.
Yeah. No, you're not wrong.
And NIL and transfer aren't the same thing. They're just not.
No, I think you're right. I think you're right here. It's definitely not the same. The only time that they would be able to transfer a second time is if they are a grad student. So once you graduate,
they have to graduate.
Yep. Yeah. Once you graduate, then you can do it again.
I guess most kids could do that. You're just not an NFL guy, or definitely not a 3-year NFL guy to do that.
Agreed. Yeah, definitely not a 3-year guy, and you would. But if you're transferring, there's obviously a reason for that, whether it be coach leaving or you're not getting playing time. If you're not getting playing time, I would imagine that means that you're probably not in a position to go early anyway.
We're going to disagree there. We're going to do it. So Joseph Burrow would like to have a word with you on that.
But I think Burrow developed at LSU.
Because you're not. No, he didn't. Joseph Burrow was Ohio Player of the Year. Like Mr. Ohio. He was the best athlete in the state. Urban Meyer had a philosophy of how he wanted to run an offense, and Joe didn't fit it. Okay? That was it. It wasn't Joe couldn't compete with those guys. Joe didn't run Urban's offense because Urban's offense wants a mobile quarterback. While Joe is mobile from a passing standpoint, Joe is a pocket passing quarterback.
Yes, absolutely. But you cannot tell me that there was not improvement from year one of Joe Burrow at LSU to his last year.
He got to – so now we're hashing something that doesn't make any sense because yes, there was improvement. When Joe got there, literally week after he got there, he didn't get spring practice with the team. He got there, and they started the season. He had no spring practice. He had barely any fall practice with these guys, and they all got hurled in at the exact same time. Also, all his receivers that had any talent at all were all true freshmen. So, yes,
true.
You're exactly correct on that. He had massive improvement because the day he started at LSU, season was started, and he didn't get any real practice in that offense.
And so what I'm saying –
second year in the offense, he took a massive leap forward.
Yes, absolutely. But
that has nothing to do with them developing him.
I'm saying that Joe Burrow went to LSU so that he could play because he was in a position where he was not going to play for Ohio State.
But you said it's because they're not good enough. And I'm telling you, kids can transfer, but they're not. There's a lot of reasons kids aren't playing.
Right. I'm not saying that they aren't good enough. I'm saying that they are not playing wherever they are, and they are probably not being looked at by the NFL at that point because they haven't shown it. Like, I don't think Joe Burrow would have been drafted had he left Ohio State having never started a game. You feel the same?
I didn't say that's not what you said, and that's not what we're talking about. You said they're transferring because they're not good enough to play, so therefore, if they're transferring, they're probably not the best. That's what you said.
If I said that, I definitely did not mean it that way, but I will.
That's why I corrected you.
I appreciate that. I misspoke.
That conversation.
If I said that, then I misspoke. And yes, it has to do situationally, which is kind of what Napier brought up here about every situation is different. You got to figure out why they're leaving. You got to figure out all these different things. But he does tie NIL into it, and that may be what we have seen based on this last transfer portal exodus. We're going to see how this works. As you and I have said multiple times, going forward, the market will correct itself. Like, people will not continue to pay for players that don't produce, and you want to be able to get your money's worth. So I totally understand that.
Well, here's the thing. Hang on. If they've got that much money, they might keep paying for players that won't produce because they keep thinking the next kid will. Hang on. But that's fine. Toughen up, Buttercup. I'm sorry. If this other school is, quote-unquote, overpaying for kids and you're mad that you're not getting them because you don't value them that much, they're getting the ones that they value. And you obviously don't value them the level that they do. That's it.
Yeah, this is true. This is true.
This idea that NIL is bad because these kids are making so much money is insane to me. We all are fine with them making $500 or $5,000. But nobody's okay with them making $500,000. And that's what bothers me, is the fact that that's hypocrisy right there. You just don't want to make him more money than you make. And that's bullshit.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So you want them to have a job. You just don't want them to have a good job.
And I don't know that it gets to be a better job than what they do playing at these SEC schools. With the amount of money that they generate, I mean,
this
it's worth
has now become, it's no longer about NIL, is it good or is it bad? This is 100% jealousy. That's all this is. When I was 18-year-old, I had a shit job that paid me $9 and change an hour, okay? And these guys are going to have a much better job making a lot more than that. That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, I have no problem with it.
I don't. But I want to call out the people that have a problem with it. If you told them, what if we pay these guys $5,000? Everybody would be okay with it. Everybody would be fine with it. Nobody would have a problem. It's the big numbers that bother them. Why? Well, they're going to piss it. Okay. Have you ever pissed money away in your life? Have you ever made a bad financial decision? Like, let them be kids, but they've still earned it. It's still okay for them to get it.
Yeah. Yeah. You think NFL player or NFL coaches have a problem with the players making as much as they do? This is way off topic.
Bill Belichick has said, yes. So Bill Belichick has made a comment in the past about whether he was going to keep a guy on the roster or not. And his agent was demanding, and this was, I'm sure it was a backup guy. I can't remember for the life of me who it was. But I remember the conversation. It was on one of those, like, behind the football scenes or whatever the NFL Network does. And he said, there's no way I'm paying this guy more than I make. He just doesn't do enough. Now I'm certain Bill might be the only coach that has ever said that or can say that. And it damn sure wasn't about a star player that ever touches the field. But it was somebody who was asking for more money that wasn't producing very much. And I remember hearing him say the words, there's no way I'm paying this guy more money than I make. and my first thought was, well, Bill, nobody's more valuable outside of Tom than you. Like, but all these other guys make a lot more than you do. That's fine because they produce. This guy doesn't produce. I'm not paying him more than I make. His agent can go kick rocks. He can go somewhere else.
There you go. I love it.
And they just cut him. Like, they don't play the game, the whole day. No, we're just going to cut you. Like, that's fine.
If you're no longer worth it, then
that's right.
We'll just get rid of it.
If somebody else wants to pay you, that we live in a hard cap society in the NFL. I want the other people to waste their money on you. I want them to waste their salary cap money on you.
Yeah, basically.
I don't want to keep you for less. I want you to go there, and I want them to overpay you because every dollar they overpay you benefits us.
Thanks for listening to the Winning Cures Everything podcast. The website is winningcureseverything.com, and if you want to connect with us, we're on Twitter at GaryWCE, at Chris B. Giannini, at Winning Cures, or you can email us, Gary at winningcureseverything.com or Chris at winningcureseverything.com. Subscribe everywhere you need to subscribe, and we'll see you soon.